over to you. Actually, first, let's do housekeeping. Welcome, everybody. Our favorite housekeeping remote remarks are just for those that are joining us and they want to participate on Zoom. If you want to make a public comment, you just click the raise hand button. I know we're also watching to see if you post in the chat. And then for those calling in and you're just on your phone, then you can press *9 to signal that you'd like to comment, or you can just talk and we will try to answer. So welcome to the RCA board meeting. Happy April, Monday, and all the things. Hope you all had a nice holiday. I will turn it over to Lisa for roll call.
Thank you. District 1?
District 1 here.
District 2? District 2? Three? District 4?
District 2 is here.
Thank you.
I think that was snoring.
District 4? District 5? Banning?
Here.
Beaumont?
Here.
Calimesa? Canyon Lake?
Here.
Corona?
Here.
Eastvale? Hemet?
Here.
Harupa Valley?
Here.
Lake Elsinore?
Here.
Menifee?
Here.
Moreno Valley?
Here.
Murrieta?
Here.
Norco?
Here.
Iris?
Here.
Riverside?
Here.
San Jacinto?
Here.
Temecula?
Here.
Wildemar?
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Awesome. Okay, just for the record, Supervisor Jeffries, because District 2 took so long to answer, we cannot make your 7-minute agenda meeting happen today. I'm so sorry. So I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. With that being said, I'm gonna ask.
Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Natasha. I appreciate that. Not.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Mr. Benoit from Wildemar, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I'd be happy to. Everyone, would please rise, place your right hand over your heart, face your nearest flag or the flag on the screen. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you so much. That'll take us to item number 4, public comments. Do we have any requests to speak?
I do see a hand raised from Patrick Ellis.
Do I just go?
I think you were recognized. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Patrick Ellis, President and CEO of the Murrieta Wildemar Chamber of Commerce, also known as everyone's favorite thorn in your side at the moment. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to kind of take a moment to first off say is that I know I've spoken to a handful of you over the last month or so about what is the MSHCP fees. I just want you all to know first off, to make it very, very clear, is I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to abolish the process, the permit, any of what's going on. I am completely 100% in favor of what is going on. My goal is to try to work with you all to figure out a solution to what might be a huge problem for a lot of our cities, especially in Southwest Riverside County, when it comes to the way the fee structure is and the way it addresses what we consider the good job building construction progress or developments when it comes to the smaller industrial and commercial properties. And so I have actually provided last week to Ann and Aaron a kind of a proposal on an idea of how to maybe look at a different structure for commercial and industrial as well as recreational developments. And my hope is that we have the opportunity to create something very good for Western Riverside County in this process. My hope is that this body would consider creating something that is beneficial this year, maybe postponing the approval of the MSHCP fees until maybe just the end of the year, obviously with everything that's gone on over the last year. But the proposal that have presented to Ann and Aaron is just a starting point. It's not, there's no hill to die on within it. It is just an opportunity to at least have a discussion. The last thing I want to be is someone who comes and complains about something without at least proposing some sort of a resolution to it. So that is my hope. And I just wanted to make sure that you're all aware of it. But again, not trying to destroy the process, but only try to help and improve it any way we can. So I'm looking forward to discussions around that, hopefully very soon, because I know time is of the essence. And I am open to talk and discuss with anybody at any given time, anything about this. So I'm sure my time is up, but thank you again for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ellis. We will be giving a quick Nexus study update, but that won't be until the latter part of the agenda in the executive directors and chairperson's update. So just for everybody, that's in there later on. So thank you. All right, that is going to take us to any additions or revisions if we have any. Don't believe we do.
No.
All right, and then we're going to, I'm going to call on Mr. DeBon for our closed session announcement.
Yes, we have one item on the closed session agenda related to property acquisitions. So we'll now be adjourning to closed session. Thank you.
Okay, we have one reportable item from closed session. That's item 1. The board approved the acquisition of the property listed under item 6A1 for the acquisition of the property for $140,000. And that's our report out for today.
Thank you, Mr. DeBon. That's going to take us to our consent calendar, our item number 7 on the agenda. Are there any requests to speak?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, then what is the pleasure of the board?
Menifee,
Santa moves.
Menifee,
I-
move.
Okay, I think I got a first by San Jacinto and a second by Menifee. Is that correct?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? If not, we'll move to roll call vote.
Thank you. District 1,
District 1, yes.
District 2,
Yes.
Banning,
Yes.
Beaumont,
Yes.
Ella Mesa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Aye.
Corona,
Yes.
Hemet, Harupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee,
Yes, but I keep hearing Darth Vader.
Oh, Lisa.
Marina Valley,
Yes.
Marietta,
Yes.
Norco,
Just for Marianne. Oh, yes. Smiling.
Paris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Yeah.
Temecula,
Yes, that would be good.
Wildemar,
Yes.
and I didn't hear a vote from Hemet.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The item does pass.
Marianne, was that Kermit voting?
I think it was Yoda.
That was very enthusiastic
Or
passing
Bad
of
Louis Armstrong.
consent calendar. Thank you so much. You guys are in rare form today. It's awesome. We're going to go to 7D on our legislative update. And I think David has prepared a little bit of an overview for us in regards to HR 972.
Pardon me, Chair, that was part of consent, so we should be moving to
Oh,
item.
I'm reading. So sorry. Thank you. So now we're going to be moving to the update on federal grants for reserve acquisitions. Am I back on track, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so it is actually not David, it is Aaron that's going to be presenting the overview for us today.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, board members. So the bottom line is that the more money we get from the state and federal governments, the quicker we can assemble our local reserve and meet the requirements of the MSHCP. It also means that we're not alone when we're bearing the burden of raising revenue. So one of the highest priorities behind the scenes for staff over the last few months through the management transition of RCA over to RCTC has been to get a handle on our current grant situation and get us set up to be as competitive as possible going forward. So this is an update on where we are. I do want to note that I'll get into as much detail as I can without treading into closed session territory regarding specific properties or negotiations. Some of these properties have already been discussed in your previous closed sessions, and some may yet be upcoming. So I want to be sensitive to that. Next slide, please. So this is a total organizational commitment. We knew going into the management transition that state and federal funding was a top priority of the committee and the board, and it's one of RCTC's strengths. Our first mission was to make sure that we spent all the money that had already been granted, as the 3 grants I'm going to talk about today were in a precarious situation in one way or the other when we took over in January. So in our favor, we have a team consisting of both RCA legacy staff and new expertise in right-of-way, finance, and legislative affairs coming over from RCTC. Some of the challenges we have are the negotiating limitations we have in dealing with these grants. These grants require us to pay the appraised value There's not as much negotiating room as there may be when we're using another source of funding. However, we're always administering these grants according to state and federal standards when it comes to appraisals and our own right-of-way manual. Next slide, please. So making it all work. Again, this is a total team effort. And even though I'm the one presenting right now, I'm talking about the work of nearly the entire organization. All of them have been working extraordinarily hard over the last few months to take care of our grant funds. And so I want to talk about the dynamics a little bit here. So on the left, you have RCA. We have the team I've just talked about, everyone from finance to government relations, right-of-way acquisition, reserve management. We've all got to be on the same page in proposing to go get grant funds, but also when we're administering it as well. In the middle, you've got the state. Our federal funds actually come through the state. So even though we may be getting a grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, there's also the state administration we have to be concerned with as well. And that involves the California Natural Resources Agency sometimes, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The Wildlife Conservation Board is the approval body for most of the grants that we receive. They meet 4 times a year. And so meeting their deadlines is very important. The state legislature is sometimes involved in deciding what goes into the state budget and what grants may be available there. And our appraisals are reviewed by the Department of General Services, also known as DGS, who I'm going to talk about in a couple of slides. On the federal side, we have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have their regional office, their headquarters in DC, and also we have to deal with Congress and the Department of Interior when they're setting up the annual budgets for these agencies and the parameters within which they have to work. So we have to make all of these pieces work together. Next slide. So usually these are the 3 current grants we are working on. I'm going to start, how about I start with the one on the top first. So the 2017 Endangered Species Act Non-Traditional Section 6 program, we usually just call this the Section 6 program. This is a funding source that most habitat plans in the country rely upon for a grant every year or every couple of years. We compete on a national basis. In FY 2017, we received a $2 million federal grant, which was matched by some state funds. And that grant expires here in less than 2 months, but we are working on a 6-month extension with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to finish up expending those funds. We're working with the Nature Conservancy as a bridge. The Nature Conservancy is able to acquire property sometimes in a more streamlined fashion or just to help us make a deadline. And so they'll jump on a property and with coordination with us and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then we'll acquire it from the Nature Conservancy. And so thankfully with this 6-month extension, we will be able to expend all of the 2017 grant funds, which is great news. The 2019 Section 6 funding, we received a large grant. This was actually 2 years worth of funding. $10 million was the federal portion, again, matched by some state funding. This was an unusual grant we received. It's only good for 1 year. And one of the conditions of receiving the funds is that we had to expend it all within 1 year, which actually meant in reality, we had less than a year to spend it once you get through all of the paperwork and the approvals, and also the timing to make a Wildlife Conservation Board meeting. We have expended some of the grant funds here, and we were hoping to report to you today, as we reported to the Executive Committee a couple of weeks ago, that all of this funding would also be spoken for, actually with the exception of some funding that would be left over. However, we were thrown a curveball a couple of weeks ago when the Department of General Services up in Sacramento rejected the appraisal for the final property we had proposed to expend all of these grant funds. That rejection is something we vehemently disagree with, and we've said so to the state, Wildlife Conservation Board, and to DGS, and to our state legislators, and to the governor's office. And the Wildlife Conservation Board, thankfully, was able to give us some flexibility to try to work on another solution, but there simply was no time left. And we will have to return a little over $4 million of this grant that had some pretty tight timelines, very stringent requirements. We were on track to get this done. Our right-of-way team and our finance team did an amazing job of pushing this one. And our legislative team got into high gear last couple of weeks to try to find any way to make this possible. Even though we won't be able to expend all of these funds, the silver lining here is that we have, through pushing so hard, opened up the door to have some more conversations with our legislators, with the governor's office, with the Wildlife Conservation Board, and we hope with DGS about better understanding their policies, procedures, and how this process can be improved in the future so that habitat plans such as ours and others who we know have also had similar frustrations don't have to turn money back, and we can put it all to use here in California. So that's the status on that grant. The final grant I'll talk about is the Harupa Mountains Conservation Grant, which came to us a couple of years ago, thanks to Assembly Member Sabrina Cervantes, who got almost $15 million in the state budget to conserve the Harupa Mountains areas. We are working on a couple of parcels right now in that area. We are in discussions on a few more. What's clear to us now, though, is that we won't be able to expend all of the funds just in the Harupa Mountain areas. There simply aren't enough willing sellers at appraised value at this point. Again, I don't want to get into closed session type stuff, but we are concerned that there will be funds left over here by the time the grant expires in a little less than a year. So we are in active conversations with Assemblymember Cervantes about potential options to expand the area of eligibility for this grant, and also possibly seek an extension of time on this grant as well, so that we can put as much of it into conservation in this area as we possibly can. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, as I mentioned a minute ago, we continue to work with the Wildlife Conservation Board. We are looking ahead to expending the rest of the 2017 grant. We have requested a workshop with the Department of General Services in Sacramento to better understand how they operate and how we can navigate this process. We're looking at all of our options in Harupa Mountains and working with Assemblymember Cervantes. And we are already getting a jump start on our FY22 proposal. That solicitation for funding is not out yet, but we want to be ready when it is so that we have the most competitive application possible. At the same time, we're in Washington right now with our advocacy team and our staff virtually advocating for improvement to the Section 6 program. In fact, we have a meeting this week with some of the Fish and Wildlife staff back in DC to talk about that, and pushing for increased funding from Congress, either through the regular appropriations process or as part of a federal infrastructure bill, because as we all know here, this habitat plan is inextricably linked to infrastructure and streamlining that. So if there is going to be a major federal infrastructure bill, we strongly believe that habitat conservation that is linked to transportation projects should be a part of that bill. And we're also keeping an eye on state bond legislation with our partners to see if there's an opportunity to include funding for HCPs in state bond proposals that are going through the legislature right now. Next slide. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions if the board has any. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Who has questions, comments?
Marianne has a question or comment, I guess.
It's all yours.
You know, it's never good to return funds. You know, we all know that if you return funds as a longtime grantor and grantee, if you return funds, it seems that agencies are a little bit skeptical to fund you the next time because you couldn't use the funds that were in place. So I would strongly suggest that we, if we haven't done it already, start a process and select target properties that we can start working on right now so that they're viable at the time that grant funds are awarded. And I also think that we should probably balance the amount of the request with the amount of properties we think we can turn over at that time, because it's never good to send money back.
I completely agree, Director Edwards. And to your first point, we have already begun that process of starting to identify what would go in our next proposal. And your point as well about kind of calibrating the amount we ask for to make sure that we can we expended is an excellent suggestion, and we will do that. One thing I do want to note is that we're kind of subject to some forces that are beyond our control, which the Fish and Wildlife Service has told us they completely understand. Even though we identify a parcel that we think is good to go, anything can happen. The seller may change their mind. The appraisal may come back at a different value than we all thought it would. The market may change. And so they've expressed to us that they're understanding of those circumstances, and that we're not unique in this situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true.
So, we will do the best to control all of the factors we can control, so that we have a proposal that has as few risks as possible, understanding that there still may be some risks, as was the case here.
Oh yeah, of course. Of course.
Your points are excellent and well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Natasha, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Marianne, you and I have been through this many times. The
Yes.
reason is that when Aaron says that there are forces that aren't working with us, quite frankly, if you look at the Department of Governmental Services and the constraints that staff have to deal with, the process, that is the huge question. And when you look at whether it's grant funding, it has to be used for a specific property. It's not like they can go out and just say, okay, we have this, we want to do this. So the criteria to get that over the hurdle, I mean, we've had plenty of these projects were in the queue for almost 2 years, a year and a half that they're trying to push through. And as the market changed, as property values changed, they come back, we can get 2 appraisals and then turn around and send it off to Department of Governmental Services, and they come back and say, we disagreed with those appraisals. And now we start from scratch again. So the system itself is somewhat broken, and it needs to be looked at on how when we request this funding, because if you look at the amount that we requested, that wasn't outlandish, and quite frankly, that was for property that we should have acquired. We just couldn't get it over the finish line.
Yeah.
With all the different scenarios that we're playing forward here with it, with respect to, they disagreed with us. So
well, the good news is if they don't take, and I agree, everything you've said is absolutely true. And it's so, because the cities deal with things like this all the time, waiting for other agencies. And it's so frustrating. But I don't know, is there a way for us to have targeted properties, like more than we need for the number that are we suspect might fall through, or percentages? It's such a crapshoot.
It's been my experience that even when you're dealing with willing sellers, this is where the problem lies, because if you get a willing seller and we get in there and we start the process, and it all depends on where those streams of funding are coming from. Because if you're getting something from the state, there's a different set of rules from getting it from a federal grant. So it's not like they're the same. And that's where the issue lies, where you can use this pile of money for this, and you can use this pile of money for that. But remember, even with a willing seller, if they start a non-development Hans, that changes everything in the queue, and that could take up to 4 years in payments, and that's going to be money that you probably won't be able to use grant funds for. That's where the problem lies when you're going out and looking for properties.
Well, I guess if there's any good news here, it's that if they are holding us up, they certainly cannot hold us
against us. Yeah.
Aaron, thank you for doing such a great job and staying on it. I know how difficult it is. I've been there, done that, and you've done a great job. So just keep up the good work and do the best you can with what you have to work with. I appreciate you.
Thank you. We have a good team.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Good discussion. And I know that the timelines are difficult, but I want to also reiterate the sentiment of my colleague, Mr. Ingram, because the team, was formed very quickly, and they had to pick up in a very tight spot. And to be quite honest, what they've been able to accomplish with this timeline is pretty incredible. So we do appreciate that. That is going to take us. So this is just a receive and file for our grant and our reserve acquisition. Aaron, thank you. That's going to take us. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Sorry. I had my hand up, so sorry. Before we move on, can you just share with me how is it that the state can just decline an appraisal? Is there guidelines? I mean,
Would you
how
like
is
me
it?
to weigh in on that, Natasha, or?
I'm gonna let Aaron take that.
Okay.
So the funding for the Section 6 grants actually is to the state of California from the federal government. We're kind of a subrecipient, if I can use that term. And so this, in order for the state to agree to release the funds to us, the state has to approve through their processes how we've done what we've done. And their method of reviewing and approving our appraisals is through the Department of General Services, which is a state agency that provides these types of services to many other state agencies as well. It's kind of their internal real estate team. And so that's what we have to work with. And their policies is actually something that we want to learn more about, and how it is that they make these determinations. It's a little bit of a mystery. Anne, would you like to add anything to that?
I would, thank you. So as Aaron said, this is an area that we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive. As was mentioned, we, along with others in the coalition, have asked for a workshop with the Department of General Services so that we can ask detailed questions about some of their decisions. We're also evaluating to find out, are some of their criteria their preferences, their professional appraisal judgment, or is it written in the manual that they can point to? We're starting to ask the detailed questions about what is driving some of these decisions. And while this is an unfortunate situation, the side benefit, I guess, of it is that it gives us a very specific example that we can use in conversation with General Services, the Wildlife Conservation Board, as well as our federal partners, so that we can understand if there are administrative restrictions in place that make this harder than it should be to fairly acquire someone's property, then what can we do to change that? Because some of what we're seeing, based on our experience, this does not appear to always be a fair process to the property owners in terms of their valuation. So we're going to start digging in deep on some of the criteria.
Thank you for explaining that, because that's what I was thinking when we get a appraisal for the property owner and then they disagree. I didn't quite sure how that worked. So I appreciate you taking the time to dig deep into this and be able to ask those tough questions. So thank you for that.
Yep, you bet.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, well then this is like I said, a receive and file, and we will move to item number 9. This is our new online conservation dashboard tool. I'm really excited. I believe that Philip's going to give us a quick overview of what this looks like as he gets ready. Are there any requests to speak on this before I turn it over to Philip? Okay, all right, Philip, wow us. We're ready to be wowed.
Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, board members and members of the public. My name is Philip, and this will be a short demonstration on the 2 new RCA annual report dashboards and how to access them. From the RCA homepage, the dashboards can be accessed by expanding the Maps menu. And they're right here, 2 annual report dashboards. The first dashboard shows the acres conserved by each jurisdiction. By jurisdiction, I mean the western cities and unincorporated county. The panel on the right contains information for each jurisdiction based on Table 2-3 in the annual report, as well as the Measure A information from RCTC. Clicking on a jurisdiction will cause the map to focus and bring up additional information. Please note that the cities of Eastvale, Harupa Valley, Menifee, and Wildomar were incorporated after the establishment of the plan, so their goals would be under unincorporated Riverside County. The bottom panel here shows all the additional reserved land progress from all the jurisdictions. This number is updated annually, so it does not reflect our current conservation numbers. This number is based on the annual report. Okay. Moving on. The second dashboard informs you the vegetation balance between conservation and development. Okay. The panel at the bottom summarizes rough step, which is what this dashboard is about. Okay. On each of this panel on the right, you will see the vegetation balance between conservation and development. And it will tell you whether a rough step unit is in or out of rough step. A positive balance in each of the vegetation categories indicate that conservation is keeping up with development, while a negative rough step balance indicates that development has outpaced conservation. In each of these dashboards, the pull-out panel on the left allows you to jump between the two dashboards, as well as a link to the annual reports that RCA puts out every year. Please note that the data on these two dashboards are pulled from the report itself, so they are updated annually. This concludes my demonstration. Thank you, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
All right. Thank you, Philip. I know that this is something that our cities and the different jurisdictions have asked for quite some time, is to be able to quickly access how much is conserved, how much further we have to go, percentage to goal. So I think that this is a really incredible tool, and I want to just share that I'm really excited about this tool, especially that our stakeholders and the public, and really it's the level of transparency is incredible. So I'll turn it over to my colleagues for questions or comments that you might have. Well, look, Philip, you wowed everybody. They have nothing. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so this is live on the website right now. I highly encourage everyone to go and just play around and look and see for your specific jurisdiction. It is interesting. And then also the rough step is very helpful when we're learning where the properties lie and what's happening. So it's designed to be very interactive. I hope you all appreciate this great tool, and I want to thank staff for making it possible. That's going to take us, anything else before I move on? Okay. All right, that's going to take us to number 10 agenda item on our Board of Directors and Executive Director report. Before I turn it over to Ann, is there any comments from my colleagues, any updates? No? Okay. All right. Then I am going to turn it over to Ann Mayer for her Executive Director report.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I do have 2 items to update you on. One is the Nexus study implementation, and the other is a quick update on the management transition. So first off, on the Nexus study, the member jurisdictions have made great progress towards implementation of the study. Nearly 3/4 of our members have at least started the adoption process, as far as we know. So we're moving ahead at full steam for final adoption by July 1st. And as we've shared previously, the RCA staff continues to assist both at the staff and elected official level every step of the way. The city of Moreno Valley has completed the entire process. So congratulations to Moreno Valley for getting it done so quickly. But also the next several weeks, we'll have a lot of activity. We have 3 cities that have already started their public hearing process on the resolutions with final votes scheduled. 6 more cities are having their first public hearings, and 3 of them are actually this week. And then we have 4 other jurisdictions who are in the process of scheduling their resolution date. So, so far, we have seen 14 of the 19 jurisdictions to date moving forward. We've been providing technical assistance at the staff level. We've been having meetings regarding the implementation manual. We've been receiving feedback there as well. We've presented to 3 WRCOG committees, and after this meeting, I will be presenting to the WRCOG Executive Committee as well. And our plan over the coming weeks is to provide additional resources. We are attending each of the meetings, and my thanks to several of you and your staff who have made accommodations for us to join remotely when we have 3 city council meetings to cover on one night. We can't all be in one place at one time. So we very much appreciate the accommodations being made to make sure that staff can be in attendance at the meetings. So I appreciate the board member support and your commitment to this process, as well as the support from your staff. We're getting closer to getting the approvals in place, as May 1st is an important deadline, considering the fact that the first phase of the Nexus study fee goes into effect on July 1st. So we are rapidly approaching that date. Mr. Ellis did raise his comments at the beginning of the meeting, and we are meeting with him next week to review his proposal. Which we will do so and discuss with him further. I would point out that any changes to the fee structure adopted by the board, changes that would change the categories, change the associated fees, would likely need to be done through a Nexus study update or a revised Nexus study. But again, we're going to be meeting with Mr. Ellis next week, and in the meantime, continue to support each of your jurisdictions as you're proceeding with adoption of the resolutions and the associated documents. The second update is related to the managing agency transition. It is going very, very well. My thanks to the staff for really putting their extra effort forward in trying to make sure that this works as smoothly as possible. We appreciate the many suggestions for improvement that we've received, not only from this board, but also stakeholders and city and county staff. So rest assured, we are logging all of those recommendations and focusing on making sure as priorities in these first few months, sustainability of the plan, making sure the Nexus study gets adopted, making sure we're dealing with our existing grants to make sure we keep the money moving and keep the land acquisition going. We're focusing again on organizational excellence. We've received a lot of feedback and suggestions about how we can make the processes easier and more simplified for not only the development community, the transportation community, but also for each of your jurisdictions. And then finally, partnerships across the board at the local, state, and federal level. We are at a really, this is really an opportunity right now in both Sacramento and Washington, DC, to see if we can not only get some streamlining in place, administrative relief, so we can get this money spent, but also seek opportunities for additional funding so that we can get the plan in place. So those are kind of the 3 areas we're focused on: sustainability of funding, operational excellence, and partnerships. And again, your suggestions and requests for improvement are appreciated, and we're implementing as quickly as we can. And with that, that completes my report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anne. Great update. Lots going on, but I also know that in conversation with the staff that really supporting all of us in our jurisdictions in the Nexus study, and any questions or even, recommendations for things such as a staff report or whatever has really been your guys' focus. And we know that you've kind of managed to keep everything up in the air, but also made that your biggest priority. So thank you for doing that. We know that this is it's crunch time, so we appreciate all your hard work. That's going to take us to, if is there any comments or questions for Anne before we move on from the board? No. Okay, then this is going to take us to item number 11. This is Mr. Ingram's favorite part of the meeting, just so you know, species of the month, and I'm going to turn it over to Betsy.
Good afternoon to the board and any members of the public that are here. This month, the species of the month is the granite night lizard. Next slide, please. The granite night lizard is a small nocturnal lizard. It's about 2 to 2.75 inches long. They have a very flattened body and fine granular scales. They actually can change color. So when they're in crevices during the day, they're a dark color, so they can be camouflaged. And at night, they come out and they're a lighter color, so they will blend in with the granite rocks that they live on. Their range is from the southern side of the San Gorgonio Pass along the western slope of the Peninsula Range into northern Baja California. Their habitat consists of flaking granite, rocky outcrops, and boulder fields that are found in chaparral, sage scrub, mixed conifer forest, and oak woodland. Their microhabitat can be found within the crevices of these rocks and under exfoliating flakes. And they come out at night to feed on small invertebrates. This species is protected from collection, and the rock crevices and flaking rock that they use for habitat can take thousands of years to form. So that type of habitat is very important for these species, and it's important that these boulders are not disturbed. They breed in the late spring, and they have 1 to 2 live young, which are born in the fall. The species objectives for this species is to include within the MSHGP conservation area at least 297,143 acres of chaparral, sage scrub, coniferous forest, and oak woodland in the eastern portion of the plan area. So this is an area east of Interstate 215. So far, we have 132,119 acres, so we're about halfway to that goal. The second objective is to include within the MSHCP conservation area at least 9 core areas, and these include Lake Skinner Diamond Valley Lake, the San Jacinto Wildlife Area, Lake Paris, the Badlands, Potrero Valley, the Banning Bench, Sage, Vale Lake, Wilson Valley, the Agua Tibia Mountains, the San Jacinto Mountains, and Anza Valley. Oh, can you go back, Phil? The third objective is to maintain the continued use of 75% of the core areas. And this species has been detected in 6 of the 9 core areas, so that almost meets the goal, with the latest detections being in 2020 in the San Jacinto Mountains and in Anza. So that's all I have for you today on the granite night lizard. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Just a comment. Great looking lizard. Good job, Betsy.
All right. Well, if you have no comments or questions for our species of the month, that will take us to item number 12, which is adjournment. I'm sorry we were not 7 minutes today. Sorry, not sorry. We're adjourning today, and our next meeting will be Monday, May 3rd. I will see you all then. Have a good afternoon.
Bye. Thank you.